Tonight, Donald Trump back in court to face the most serious criminal charges yet. The former U.S. president pleads not guilty to trying to overturn the last election as he campaigns to run in the next one.
This is a very sad day for America.
Face to face with wildfires and suddenly forced to run from the flames.
If that ain't danger close, I don't know what is.
Plus, what does all that dangerous smoke do to our eyes?
I think it's really serious.
Canadians asked for it, and Taylor Swift answered.
She's coming to Canada, she's coming to Canada, she's coming to Canada.
But she's only coming to one city.
This is The National with Anita Bath.
Adrian is away, not far from the White House he's fighting to return to. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty tonight to federal conspiracy charges, all linked to his handling of the 2020 presidential election. Prosecutors accuse him of trying to overturn the results after he lost and prevent the transfer of power to Joe Biden. Trump is calling this a political persecution. What happened today was a major moment in U.S. history and a major spectacle for both Trump's supporters and his detractors. Katie Simpson was at the courthouse. Katie, take us through how high the stakes are.
This trial has the potential to test the limits of American democracy. Think about it. You've got a former president running for re-election accused of conspiring to rob Americans of a free and fair vote in an attempt to remain in power. Whatever happens will send a clear message to the country about the expectations of jurors and, more broadly, voters, and when it comes to the actions of their leaders. Donald Trump is well rehearsed for this moment. Heading into court for his third indictment in a 4-month span, he was whisked into Washington, D.C., greeted by demonstrators, a few dozen at most, and by curious onlookers, all in the shadow of the U.S. Capitol. It was a carnival-like atmosphere.
Yeah. Sorry, Trump, you gotta face the court.
No!
Yeah.
No.
Trump's critics here to witness history.
I'm embarrassed for our country in that there's so many people that still believe in Donald Trump.
New York is in the house for President Trump.
While the former president's supporters remain confident his legal problems are actually helping his re-election campaign.
Every time that there's a new indictment, whether it's New York, or whether it's Miami, or back here in the swamp, he goes up another 5 to 7 points. So I'm looking forward to another 5-point Trump bump after today, after all the free advertising.
The crowd only glimpsed Trump in his motorcade that drove into a private courthouse garage. As he waited for the hearing to start, he reportedly stared at the man who led this investigation, Special Counsel Jack Smith, who sat a few meters away and did not return the gaze. Trump stood to enter his not guilty plea on charges he conspired to overturn the 2020 election, the judge warning Trump to follow his release conditions or else he may be held in custody before his trial. As Trump emerged from court, the Republican presidential frontrunner remained defiant.
This is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him.
So, Katie, are we getting any sense of when this case might actually go to trial?
There could be some clarity coming out of the next court date on August 28th. Prosecutors want a speedy trial. Trump's legal team wants to put this off until after the 2024 presidential election. Remember, Trump is already due in court next year for other trials. This will pull him away from a traditional re-election campaign. But there's nothing about Donald Trump that is traditional. He is smoking his political challengers despite his legal problems. And every time he gets in trouble, serious trouble, as his supporters say, he's seen a boost in the polls.
Katie, thank you.
Thanks.
These charges are just the latest for Donald Trump. He's got dozens in 3 separate cases right now, and a 4th case could be on the way. In New York, he's accused of falsifying business records related to hush money payments made to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Total charges, 34. That trial is scheduled for March of 2024. In Florida, he's accused of illegally possessing classified documents and storing them at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Total charges there, 40. That trial is scheduled for May 2024. Then there are 4 charges he now faces in Washington for alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, bringing the total number of charges Trump faces right now to 78. But all eyes are on Georgia, where a state prosecutor is investigating alleged efforts by Trump and his allies to undermine the election results there. A decision on any possible charges is expected soon. Back in this country, Environment Canada confirms a tornado touched down tonight in Ottawa's South End. This video posted to social media appears to show the twister touching down just before 7 p.m. local time. One home's roof was partially torn off. Multiple trees and power lines were also knocked down, but electricity has mostly been restored. The affected area also saw hail the size of ping pong balls. And concern is growing tonight over a fast-moving wildfire in British Columbia. That's triggered the evacuation of nearly 100 more homes. This is how close the flames got to the community of Adams Lake. And because there's no road access, evacuees were forced to leave by ferry or by their own boat. The small recreational community is located just north of Kamloops. Mira Baines now with the panicked evacuations.
If that ain't danger close, I don't know what is.
Desperate measures as a man tries to use a garden hose to protect his home on the edge of Adams Lake. This wildfire is the latest in BC to threaten a popular tourist area.
It was the wind that was the real game changer that turned the situation from really nothing serious to it was amazing how far the fire spread in a couple hours.
The community is only accessible by boat. A small ferry took many to safety. Nearly 100 properties now under evacuation order by Thursday afternoon.
All evacuees except those residents who elected on their own volition to stay. Everyone has now been moved across. However, the ferry will be running continuously in order to support the wildfire fighters.
The BC Wildfire Service says the fire was moving at 50 kilometers an hour, fueled by strong winds.
Wind shift developed into some pretty extreme fire behavior developing into the evening and overnight.
Oh my God.
Windy conditions also pushed another fire down a mountain Tuesday night.
Well, that's my house gone. I ain't surviving that, is it?
And into cabins near Gun Lake, about a 4-hour drive north of Whistler.
Holy.
Paul Kenya was forced to flee when flames suddenly intensified.
It was like this wind came through that I've never experienced in my life. It was like heat and a whirlwind and a tornado all mixed into one. There were giant branches flying through the air.
That fire is still out of control as the province struggles with a record year of forests burned.
We will continue to do what it takes and to spend whatever it takes to fight these wildfires and support communities through these evacuations.
With a long weekend ahead, the BC Wildfire Service is warning people to be vigilant and stay safe.
Mira, firefighters in BC have been trying to predict wildfire behaviors. Has that helped with this fire in any way?
Anita, the BC Wildfire Service says it has been using computer modeling and fire behavior specialists to predict how a fire grows. They do that by looking at weather data and what the fire is doing on the ground. But the service says winds can change direction suddenly, and that's proven difficult for computer modeling to predict. Winds have been picking up and shifting direction in the late afternoon and evenings, so people are being told to report wildfires immediately as fires can grow fast.
Mira Baines in Vancouver tonight. There are new warnings tonight about how all that wildfire smoke could be damaging our eyes. As Jennifer LaGrassa tells us, experts say take precautions now because the long-term impacts are still largely unknown.
Large clouds of wildfire smoke filling Canada's skies have made it hard for people to breathe and see.
They felt gritty all the time. It's like having a pair of glasses on that you can't clean.
In June, smoke in New Brunswick irritated Kate LeBlanc's eyes, forcing her to repeatedly rinse them out.
I basically hide out, period. I don't go outside.
The cornea, which is the clear window in front of the eye, can also become dry and irritated.
There's very fine particulate matter in wildfire smoke, and it can cause our eyes to become red, itchy, and watery.
We know that it can cause inflammation of the eye. The issue is, what long-term complications can we get?
That's not so clear. Right now, researchers are using similar pollutants to look at the effects of wildfire smoke, like fumes from cigarettes and traffic. Studies find that these can accelerate issues like cataracts or other debilitating eye diseases.
I think it's really serious. Millions of people are being exposed to smoke throughout the year in a way that we have not seen before and in a way that we are not prepared for.
Australia's intense, raging bushfires, like the ones in 2020, has this researcher studying whether the impact on our eye can be undone. Early research that could help gauge those long-term consequences.
If we don't have a uniform understanding of how we should protect the eyes and how we should manage any eye disease that does occur from wildfire smoke exposure, I think our patients are going to suffer.
Right now, Health Canada doesn't have any eye protection guidance, but health experts advise not to use allergy medications or rub the eyes, and instead to wear protective eye gear and rinse them with artificial tears. Jennifer Lagrassa, CBC News, Toronto.
Lizzo is firing back tonight against accusations from 3 of her former dancers. The pop star says the allegations of harassment and discrimination are false. But as Tashana Reed shows us, her accusers are standing by their claims.
Lizzo has built a brand on body positivity and female empowerment. Now the singer is facing a lawsuit from 3 women. That includes accusations of sexual harassment and discrimination.
Was I pressured to touch a nude performer? Yes. Was I brought into a private meeting where I was kind of interrogated about my personal matters and ended up having to share very personal things about myself regarding my weight? Yes.
The women, all former tour dancers, Ariana Davis, Crystal Williams, and Noelle Rodriguez, allege the singer created a hostile work environment.
She actually balled up her fist like this to me.
What's up, y'all? It's Lizzo. I'm looking for dancers.
After days of silence, for the first time, Lizzo addressed the lawsuit in an Instagram post, calling the allegations false and outrageous. She added, "These sensationalized stories are coming from former employees who have already publicly admitted that they were told their behavior on tour was inappropriate and unprofessional." Her production company and a choreographer are also named in the suit.
Looking at the response from Lizzo was so disheartening.
This story raises yet again the issue of how pervasive body hatred is, how pervasive fat hatred is.
Jill Andrew is the co-founder of an organization that advocates for inclusive representation.
We cannot allow this one example, this one situation that's unfolding to unravel the movement.
Photo shoot.
While none of the allegations have been proven in court, Lizzo's legal team will have 30 days to respond to the lawsuit, and a judge will then decide if it will go to trial. Tashana Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says he's reached out to the Prime Minister after hearing the news yesterday that Trudeau and his wife are separating.
I understand how many families have gone through something so difficult, and that to do it in the public limelight, like I said, is really, really hard, and it's hard on the kids. So I respect their request for privacy.
Sources say Sophie Gregoire Trudeau has already moved out of Rideau Cottage. Their 3 children are expected to stay mostly with their father, with her visiting often as they co-parent. Well, Alberta's government is hitting pause on large renewable energy projects. Nothing will be approved until the end of February. Elise Von Schiel now on what the province says is behind the decision and why the move has some concerned.
These fields will be a bit quieter now as Alberta pauses approvals for new large renewable energy projects. The province says it's reviewing how new wind and solar projects change the power grid and the landscape.
We have a lot of sun, we have a lot of wind, and
We know that we're an attractive place to land for that. So let's just make sure that the ground rules are clearly established.
Alberta is attracting billions in renewable energy and has the third largest power grid in Canada. But there are concerns from farmers about using land that could be growing food. Another concern, what could happen if a company abandons the solar panels or turbines in a province that's already dealing with orphaned oil and gas wells?
You drive down the highway, you see these turbines and everything, but boy, when they come into your backyard, you know, these turbines are a fifth of a kilometer high. You start to look at things differently.
Alberta says 15 projects are affected. Other estimates from a Canadian think tank say it's 90. Anything under 1 megawatt can still be built during the freeze, minuscule compared to the project proposals on the table.
It is entirely possible to have, food security, to protect our wildlife, and to have solar at the same time. We don't need to be at odds. We don't need to be fighting amongst ourselves.
This expert is concerned with what message the pause could send about Alberta and its commitment to cutting pollution.
The irony struck me initially that we've been talking for years about cumulative effects, unfunded environmental liabilities in the landscape for oil and gas, and the idea that the government would stand in the way of any kind of economic development, let alone economic development on private lands, until they sort of figured things out. Would be unfathomable.
Alberta's Utilities Commission is starting their review right away. A report on those ground rules for projects is expected by the end of March. Elise Von Schiel, CBC News, Calgary.
There's new pushback tonight against Canada's single-use plastics ban. Some grocery stores want compostable bags to be exempt, but as David Thurton tells us, the federal government isn't on board.
This Toronto supermarket offers eco-conscious customers options at checkout. Compostable shopping bags.
They love them. It's definitely a convenient option if anybody does forget their reusable bag.
But soon they'll disappear under the single-use plastics ban, leading this Calgary store to petition the federal government for an exemption.
We do feel that these bags really are worth fighting for.
That grocery is getting help in their fight, with others joining.
If you want to do a blanket approach that doesn't work for everybody, we've got that right now.
The City of Calgary accepts these bags as green bin liners because they break down in their organics recycling facilities.
We want to make sure that federal legislation isn't inadvertently hampering or hindering really innovation in this space.
These bags are made from a starch-based polymer. If it's good enough for municipalities, it should be good enough for Ottawa, according to the manufacturer.
We were quite shocked at the decision to lump them into a category called non-conventional plastics, as there's no plastic in the product. I do hope they start listening and start looking at the science.
Canada's Environment Minister says not all municipalities are equipped to deal with the bags, which often end up in the dump and don't break down.
We won't change the regulation for one company. It makes absolutely no sense.
Environmentalists say Canadians used 50 million plastic checkout bags in 2019. Diverting them to composting could create problems.
So imagine if we just replaced all that with so-called compostables. It would overflow all our organics programs, and we wouldn't have any room for actual organics.
Under federal regulations, the sale of single-use plastic checkout bags will be banned come mid-December. But with Alberta businesses and politicians not backing down, this could become another provincial federal battle over environmental policy. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
The anticipation is over. Taylor Swift is coming to Canada. 6 new dates, but just one city.
It comes down to money.
Frustration to get service.
People want to speak with someone. They want an answer. They want to be heard.
Why you may be put on hold for longer. A Toronto man becomes a millionaire thanks to one card and rapper Post Malone.
My heart was racing, my hands were shaking.
We're back in 2. The National Ballet of Ukraine is coming to Canada next January. They'll kick off their tour in Quebec before making several other stops across the country. The company says it will show the spirit of Ukraine and celebrate art and beauty over tyranny and destruction. Proceeds will go toward humanitarian aid in Ukraine. And Taylor Swift fans are celebrating and getting organized tonight after she announced her Eras tour will now make a Canadian stop after all. Tickets go on sale for the Toronto shows next week. And as Greg Ross shows us, anticipation is already building.
She's coming to Canada. She's coming. Taylor Swift is coming to Canada.
I knew she wasn't going to just skip over Canada.
On social media, the excitement is clear after months of pleading.
Are you ready for it?
Taylor Swift fans finally got what they wanted.
This is not a drill.
6 Canadian tour dates scheduled for November 2024, all of them at Rogers Centre in Toronto.
We already registered for tickets this morning to buy them next week.
I'm really excited to go. I love Taylor Swift.
How do you not love Taylor Swift? Really? she's an icon.
Until now, Canadian fans have had to watch the Eras tour through clips of sold-out shows elsewhere posted online. It's been a difficult ticket to get. In some cities, die-hard fans gathered outside of venues just to listen.
This is unbelievable.
So far, this is the only Canadian stop on the tour, and experts say there's a reason for that.
It comes down to money. The big issue here is you need scale. You need to have enough people in the seats to justify a trip. This is across the border as well, so she's got a huge entourage. She's got a lot of logistics and freight. They have to assemble their equipment to do a custom show everywhere they go.
It's more than just a concert ticket.
Andrew Weir with Destination Toronto says the trickle-down effect these shows will have on other businesses in the city will be massive.
They consume not only the event they're here for, the concert, but also hotels, restaurants, probably go do some other things while they're in town, do some shopping. So the economic impact is tremendous, and we know that this is the kind of event that will draw visitors.
He says they're not only expecting fans from all over Canada and the U.S., there could be fans from all over the world coming to see these shows. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Legendary singer-songwriter Buffy Sainte-Marie is retiring from live performances.
So you better hang on and hey, you better run, 'cause here's your chance and your race is begun.
Health concerns are behind the decision for the 82-year-old to step back. In a statement, Sainte-Marie writes, arthritic hands and a recent shoulder injury have made it no longer possible to perform to my standards. Sincere regrets to all my fans and family, my band, and the support teams that make it all possible. There are renewed calls tonight for Hockey Canada to change the rules around young players and body checking. Researchers say the age limit should be raised. Ethel Musa explains why.
Cross that body, give it back, push back.
These young hockey players in Toronto are learning how to body check.
It's great. I love hitting, and I just love it.
Everything is starting here in our legs.
For some, it's an essential part of the game, but some researchers are calling on Hockey Canada, which governs the sport nationally, to raise the age when body checking is allowed from 13 to 15 years old. Mick Coyle doesn't think that's such a bad idea.
My son's not very big as it is, he's a small kid, so if you can prolong the body checking to he's 15 rather than 13, then I wouldn't be adverse to that.
Dr. Christian Goulet led a review of medical research into sports-related concussions and body checking. He says evidence shows the earlier you introduce the move, the more injuries you have.
You can decrease the incidence of concussions, 2-3-fold, upwards of 70-80% decreased concussion rates by limiting body checking.
When I do go in this hit, I can follow through with my hands.
Coach and former professional hockey player Zach Fitzgerald says teaching younger players how to body check properly is critical to keeping them safe in the long run.
It's nature is a physical game. I think regardless, you're going to be into a situation where it's going to get physical.
But Goulet says the research doesn't support early exposure.
What's at risk is a generation being, exposed to unnecessary trauma, which has been shown to have a long-lasting effect both on the neurologic and the psychologic.
One more.
Hockey Canada says it relies on research to ensure players develop the skills they need to be confident on the ice, including learning about proper body contact. Ethel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
The head of Somalia's Athletics Federation has been suspended after a sprinter's shocking run at the World University Games. The runner in blue falls behind right from the start and never catches up. It took her more than 21 seconds to complete the 100 meters. That's almost twice as long as the winner. The sports minister said the 20-year-old was neither a sports person nor a runner and alleged she ran as a result of nepotism. Canadians have endured days of extreme heat this summer, and people living in cities are faring worse.
Part of the reason is actually that the asphalt really absorbs the sunlight.
We get the science behind scorching cities. And that summer cocktail may be harmful.
We have much better understanding of the link between alcohol and cancer.
But should your wine carry a warning?
It's life-saving information.
The National takes you deeper into the stories shaping our world next. From wildfires to punishing heat waves, it's been a summer of extremes. Not only is July expected to be the world's hottest month ever recorded, parts of Canada have also posted unprecedented temperatures from BC to the Maritimes, and there are weeks of summer to go. Nowhere are those heat waves more punishing than in cities where concrete and glass amplify the effects and where 80% of Canadians now live. Here's Anya Zolojowski on the push to cool our cities down.
When a heat wave hits, people in cities often suffer more, but there are things we can do to make cities more heat resilient.
The Italians are calling it the Week of Hell.
Too hot even to visit one of the world's greatest historic sites, the Parthenon.
From St. Louis to South Florida.
There's nothing you can really do. There's nothing you can do. It's hot.
Sarah, as a researcher who specializes in climate resilience, why are cities so hot?
Cities are hot because we've actually changed the land surfaces. And so when we build cities, we put roads down, we put houses down, we remove the existing vegetation. So within a city as well, there's all kinds of differences between different neighborhoods. This neighborhood, for example, has a lot of really big, wonderful trees that can decrease the temperature in our area.
Without features like trees, communities burn. We took a thermometer to this area, no trees around.
And so it's showing quite hot, almost 30 degrees already. So it's going to be a lot hotter here on the asphalt. And part of the reason is actually that the asphalt really absorbs the sunlight and holds it inside of it.
Just around the corner where there are trees, it's much cooler. Okay, so tell me what we're seeing on the thermometer.
All right, so right now it's actually showing about 21 degrees and 50% humidity, which is a pretty big difference.
Almost 10 degrees.
Yeah, almost a full 10 degrees.
Yeah, why is that?
So right now we're in the shade, the thermometer's in the grass, we're underneath all of these big, beautiful trees. And because of that, there's just a lot less heat. The grass doesn't radiate heat the same way asphalt does, so it doesn't absorb or radiate it. You can feel it, it's quite cool.
No kidding. One thing I'm wondering about too is obviously in cities we have just denser communities. How do high rises and condos play into this?
Denser neighborhoods are better because there's actually more walkability. And so that means there needs to be less infrastructure for roads, which means less asphalt that actually holds all that heat. But it can also play a part as well in something called like an urban canyon. So when the heat comes and shines on all these reflective surfaces, it can really increase. So it really depends on the density and the height of the buildings, as well as the materials that are on the outside of them.
So even here in Edmonton, a winter city, we have to come up with heat coping solutions. And elsewhere in the world, the situation's more dire, and some initiatives are already underway. Paris is creating 800 spaces across the city known as cool islands. They include parks, water fountains, swimming pools, and museums. Cool islands can be 2 to 4 degrees cooler than nearby streets. Phoenix and Athens have introduced heat officers to coordinate responses to scorching temperatures. Windsor, Ontario is one of many cities rapidly planting trees. They're adding fountains to parks too. All this is urgent. Heat has caused tens of thousands of deaths in recent years. Today it's known as a silent killer, and it's especially dangerous for the elderly and those with underlying health conditions. Last year, nearly 62,000 people died in Europe, when the continent had its hottest summer ever on record. In 2021, more than 600 people died during British Columbia's heat dome event. And heat waves likely aren't going away. A new study found that this year's chain of heat waves would be virtually impossible without the climate crisis causing them. So experts say it's time for solutions, especially those that help the most vulnerable.
Environmental justice is about the unequal distribution of risk, right? Now, people think, oh, everyone lives under the sun, so everyone should be equally impacted by heat, right? There should be no unequal distribution. It's almost a democratic effect, people think, but that's not true, because the social conditions make some more vulnerable to the effects of heat than others.
And while cities figure out how to adapt, regular people are getting creative.
How to make an air conditioner. Fan, bowl of ice, crushed or cubed. Turn on fan. Air conditioner.
Nice dude with some nice dreams. See these ice cubes, see these ice creams.
Some use umbrellas to create their own shade, while in China this year, beachgoers wore face skinis to protect their skin. Whatever can be done to cool us off, it needs to happen fast, and it needs to help everyone.
New guidelines released earlier this year say your glass of wine can be dangerous.
This is not a fight against the industry, it's a fight against cancer.
We revisit the call for warning labels next. For scientists, the link between alcohol and the risk of cancer has never been so clear. That's why the latest guidelines for Canadians drastically cut the number of drinks that are considered low risk. Earlier this year, just before the advice changed, Joanna Remiliotis investigated the push for warning labels on alcohol bottles to make that danger crystal clear.
Most Canadians don't know that alcohol causes cancer. It's a carcinogen up there with tobacco and asbestos. There are thousands of studies that point to the cancer risk. And yet, there are no warning labels like the ones you see on cigarettes, at least not yet. But the pressure is building to make cancer warning labels on alcohol mandatory, because you have a right to know. There's a lot to unpack, so let's start with the latest catalyst to this, Canada's new expected drinking guidance. The old guidance suggested no more than 15 drinks a week for men and 10 for women. The new advice? Any more than 2 drinks a week is risky. 3 to 6 drinks a week increases the risk of developing certain cancers. More than 7 drinks a week also increases your risk of heart disease and stroke. The danger goes up with every additional drink. Why the drastic change in guidance?
Well, it changed because we have better evidence. So last time we did the guidelines, it was in 2011. In 10 years, there's definitely been significant improvements in our understanding of mortality and morbidity associated with alcohol use. We have much better understanding of the link between alcohol and cancer.
We are recommending for people to become aware of those facts.
Catherine Paradis is with the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction. She says the evidence is clear, and it's why health warning labels are necessary to help inform Canadians.
People should assess their personal risk.
Paradis co-chaired the scientific panel behind the new advice. These experts reviewed nearly 6,000 studies that link alcohol with cancer. But Paradis says most Canadians aren't aware of the danger.
They don't know about certain risks. For example, the alcohol and cancer, they don't know. Then there are some facts that they think they know, but it's just plain wrong. For example, that alcohol would protect you from certain heart disease. That is no longer accurate. You know, the most recent studies show that's not true.
That's where labels come in. Ones that tell you how many drinks are in a container so you can keep track of how much you're drinking. And labels with health risks like cancer so you know why drinking less is better. And experts want all that information right where you can see it.
Standard drink labeling are necessary because people need to be able to count their drink. They need consistent, easy to use information at the point of pour. Labels about the health risk, warning labels, will allow to provide people with that rationale as to why they should follow the guidance. If labeling appears on containers, that will really support people making those decisions a little bit easier.
Because most people have no idea.
Most people have no idea, no.
So that does kind of tie into...
The push for labels is based on research led by Canada. Erin Hoban is a senior scientist with Public Health Ontario. She ran one of the only real-world experiments of alcohol warning labels in Yukon in 2017. These labels were used in 2 government-owned liquor stores for a month.
So what we learned from that study was that the cancer warning grabbed consumer attention. They read the cancer warning very closely. They thought about that message. They talked to their neighbors and their friends about that message.
People not only talked about the warnings, Hoban says, they drank less too.
Exposing people to cancer warnings on alcohol containers actually is associated with a 7% reduction in per capita alcohol use compared to sites that were not exposed to the alcohol warning labels.
The Yukon Cancer Label study was cut short because the alcohol industry intervened and the Yukon government couldn't afford a potential legal battle. We asked the industry where they stand on cancer warning labels now. Wine Growers Canada, Beer Canada, and Spirits Canada replied with statements focusing on drinking responsibly and in moderation. Wine Growers Canada added it doesn't believe health warning labels are the best way to educate consumers, while Beer Canada says it remains open to labeling suggestions that prove helpful in reducing harmful drinking. But experts say the industry actually has a legal duty to clearly inform you of any risks, especially when those risks are not well known. So how critical are warning labels on alcohol containers to inform consumers?
They are not just critical, they are required under the law currently. I think that there is no excuse that they're not there. If we're going to enjoy this, then we ought to be aware of the risk. And I love going for beer. This is not saying don't drink beer.
Jacob Shelley is a law professor at Western University in London, Ontario, who has worked on alcohol policy.
This is not about prohibition. This is about being aware of the risks and making informed decisions.
He often talks to his students about the harmful effects of alcohol and says the obligation to inform is higher when a product is ingested.
I'm not surprised that the alcohol industry has opposed that kind of warning because there's money to be made by increasing consumption. And so the more consumers actually purchase, the more money they make. So there's a conflict on their part to provide that information, but legally they're required.
If the industry is not compelled to do it and it's not in their interest to do it, who is responsible for getting them on the containers?
At a minimum, we should expect governments to be doing this, right? We have governments regulating all sorts of products to ensure they're safe, from baby cribs to cars, right? And so the government really ought to be more involved in requiring these types of labels and can justify that requirement by saying that this is an obligation that manufacturers already have.
We reached out to Health Canada. The agency responded with a statement. Health Canada says it recognizes alcohol use presents a significant public health and safety issue, adding it will review the new guidance and any recommendations. But the political pressure is heating up because once again, it comes back to you having the right to know.
Somebody said to me just this morning, I did not know that alcohol was a Class 1 carcinogen. And you know what? I think I'm going to second guess that second drink next time around as a result. So
Lisa Marie Barron is a New Democrat MP. We caught up with her last fall in Nanaimo, British Columbia.
I just want people to have the information so that they're not going, I didn't have that information, that I should have had access.
She met with her constituents to discuss a motion she put forward in the House of Commons last summer, calling for a national warning label strategy.
So this is not about placing judgment on alcohol consumption.
Barron used to work in addictions and has seen how harmful the effects can be. In your perspective, how critical is it that Canadians understand the risks involved with drinking?
I mean, it's life-saving information for people to be able to have.
She wants Ottawa, not the industry, to dictate what Canadians know.
Right now it's left with industry to decide what Canadians should or shouldn't know on the bottles. And so I'm trying to turn that around and say it's federal responsibility to ensure that Canadians have this information, and here's one tool for us to be able to get that moving forward.
And the pressure is heating up on another political front too. Senator Patrick Brazeau is pushing for labels as well, this time in the Senate.
So I rise today to propose a modest but essential amendment to the Food and Drugs Act to require honest labeling, a cancer warning on alcohol products.
He's also urging the government to act on cancer warning labels, and it's deeply personal.
I know what it is when people hurt, and I know that alcohol causes a lot of hurt, and this is just my way of trying to give back, and that's all it is.
Brazeau says his own experience with addiction was devastating. He and his team say Canadians have a right to know that drinking can be dangerous to your health.
Why do you think it's so important that the federal government take the lead on this?
Well, obviously, you know, it's a health issue that affects all Canadians. And now it's up to the federal government to be bold, to take a strong stance, and to have moral courage, and to say exactly that alcohol causes cancer to all Canadians, so they can make better informed decisions for themselves.
Okay, so this was the industry resistance.
Okay, there it is. Brazeau knows what he's up against and says no matter how big the opposition, he's not backing down.
I know that this is going to be a tough fight. It may take months and may take even years, and it may take different prime ministers. I don't know, but we need to start having that debate. And I know that the industry is very powerful, but you know, this is not a fight against the industry, it's a fight against cancer, and this is a fight that I'm willing to take on.
Okay, you saw there, Joanna, speaking to Canadian Senator Patrick Brazeau. Today, his office told us they've seen some progress with that bill that pushes for these warning labels. It will soon go to a standing Senate committee. They'll review it and hear from expert witnesses before it can go on to the next stage. Next, he didn't destroy it in Mount Doom. Instead, he sold it to Post Malone.
It happened so fast, like I can't even tell you. It was amazing.
The multi-million-dollar deal in our moment. The last time you tried calling a company for help, were you put on hold? Were they experiencing higher than normal call volumes? As Madeline Cummings tells us, it seems the call center industry is changing and operators may not be standing by.
Milena Santoro teaches her business students to put customers first.
We're happy you called. There's a bit of a wait.
So when it took 10 days to reach a major airline on the phone this spring, she was frustrated.
I certainly will not use the same airline again because of that experience.
She's noticed more companies encouraging people to solve problems online, but says automated tools can only go so far.
People want to speak with someone. They want an answer. They want to be heard.
Companies are shrinking call centers through outsourcing and using more automated services like chatbots, says this expert.
They figure if we can underinvest in customer service in order to offer lower prices, as well as meet some profit expectations on our shareholders.
He says agents' jobs have gotten harder because they're taking longer, more complicated calls, while chatbots take the easy ones. And frustration is growing in public sector call centers too. The Canada Revenue Agency says the average call handling time has doubled in the past 3 years, rising from 8 to 16 minutes, despite millions of dollars in government investment to speed the process up. In addition to hiring more temporary staff, the government has been expanding online tools, including a chat service. So where does this leave Canadians who are sick of spending so much time on the phone? Well, just because a company tells you you're in for a long wait doesn't mean it will happen.
Please hold to keep your place in line.
That number is almost always set high so that they can delight you when you pick up sooner.
Jeff Galino analyzes customer service calls for a living. He says fed-up Canadians should complain when customer service doesn't measure up.
Every company gives you an offer for a survey and nobody takes them.
Because survey response rates are so low, he says, companies pay a lot of attention to the few responses they do receive. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Edmonton.
This is a one-of-a-kind moment. Toronto's Brooke Trafton not only got to meet rapper Post Malone, he also swung a deal and walked away with more than $2 million. That money was in exchange for the One Ring, a collectible card inspired by Lord of the Rings and the only one in existence. The new ring bearer is our moment.
Honestly, it was magical. I had planned to go to the store. I went up to the counter. I bought 2 extra boxes. This pack right here. It was in there, and I knew, like, it's life-changing. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. I was like, no way. Then you read the one of one, and I'm like, no, this can't be real. Meeting Post Malone was like, I can't even, like a year ago, I couldn't even imagine this, you know? And one thing led to another, and you saw the video. I did not expect that. It happened so fast, like I can't even tell you. It was amazing. It was $2 million US. I'm just an average person. I work in retail, cashier / forklift driver. Well, I might as well keep working, but I do love my job, to be honest. It was the greatest moment of my life.
Who knew Post Malone's such a big fan? He's even got a Magic the Gathering tattoo, and $2 million. He bought that pack for $50. So life-changing indeed. That's the National for August 3rd. Hope you have a good night.